Look, I believe in one simple truth. You don't have to be superhuman to be a superhero. There are heroes all around us. Heroes of culture, business, philanthropy, and technology. And on this show, I'm going to talk to them all. My name is Joe Anthony, and this is Hero Talk. Welcome to another episode of Hero Talk, the show where we talk to ordinary people doing extraordinary things, heroes of culture, philanthropy, business, and technology, who all have one thing in common: they want to change the world. And today, I'm so honored to have the incomparable Beth Fairchild. What's up, girl? How you doing?
What's up? It's good to be here.
I'm so happy and so excited to have you here today. This is the first time that we've actually got a chance to meet, right? But I've become such a fan of yours from the first time that we kind of worked together tangentially, because you worked with us on the Story Have Told program. Right. And the pictures that came out of that program were so provocative, so amazing. And I just got enchanted, not just because you're such a beautiful woman, but because you're so expressive and so willing to kind of tell a story about who you are, your journey, your plight, and what you're experiencing every day. I'm just so happy to have you here to finally get a chance to talk to you live. So again, thanks again for joining us.
I'm happy to be here. My pleasure.
So just to kind of give the viewers a little primer, you are like the busiest girl I know, right? Because you're a yoga instructor, you're a tattoo artist, you're a mom, you're a wife, you're the president of an amazing advocacy organization for metastatic breast cancer called Metavivor. But more importantly, you're a woman living with metastatic breast cancer. That's a lot, right? But before we kind of go into who Beth Fairchild is, I would like you to kind of give the audience an understanding of what metastatic breast cancer is, because there is a lot of kind of misperceptions out there. So talk a little bit about what is metastatic breast cancer, when you were diagnosed, and a little backstory on kind of on how you found out. And
sure. So metastatic breast cancer is any time breast cancer has left the breast. So early stage 0 through 3, the cancer stays primarily in the breast tissue. Those cells in breast cancer can disseminate from the original tumor and travel through your lymph system or your bloodstream, and they can lie dormant in your body for years and years before taking up residence somewhere else. And once that happens, then your cancer is metastatic, and at that point, it's terminal, it's incurable. It's a little different than early stage people because we're in treatment forever. There's no end of chemo or end of treatment, ring the bell and go on with your life. It's something, that you're going to have to deal with every day until the end. I was diagnosed at 34 years old. I was in the best shape of my life. I was in the gym 5 days a week, and I ate clean, and, I never drank, never smoked. I thought I was probably one of the healthiest people I knew. And then my ovaries started to grow, and I went to have a hysterectomy, and the pathology came back as breast cancer. So it's, needless to say, really shocking. And because it had metastasized to my ovaries, I knew that it was bad, right? It wasn't in my breast anymore. So when they said stage 4, I knew that things were not good. And
now, this is not ovarian cancer at this point. This is still breast cancer,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
because a lot of people think that if it moves to another part of the body, now it's no longer breast cancer, but that's not true.
That's right, and it's a good point. I hear a lot of people say, well, she had breast cancer in whatever year, and then many years later died of brain cancer. But the truth is that the breast cancer just spread to the brain, or the bones, or the lungs, or the liver. That's where it really likes to go. And my metastases were to my entire pelvis, all of my reproductive organs, my liver, and my bones.
Wow. So at this point, you are living with a terminal diagnosis. Obviously, when you found that out, devastating news, what was the first thing that was going through your mind at that point?
The first thought that I had was what this meant for my daughter. I have one daughter that's my biological child, and my first thought was, well, did I give this gene to her? Do I have a genetic predisposition to cancer? And did I pass this on to my child? That was, my kids come first. And so that was the first thought that I had. And then the second thought was just, I have to live like hell for the next however many years I have. They told me I had 2 years to live, and that was really hard to accept. but I knew that I wanted to make it the best 2 years of my life, and so I did.
And how long ago was that?
That was just over 3 years ago.
Awesome, awesome. Good for you, good for you. Now, you talked a little bit about the fear that you had in potentially passing this down to your daughter. I read in your bio that your mom was also diagnosed with breast cancer. She didn't have MBC, but she had an early stage.
Right.
So obviously it runs in your family. But that's not necessarily something that has to be true for women to be diagnosed with
actually, very, very few people have a genetic disorder. I mean, if you test for BRCA1 or 2, it's pretty unusual considering the amount of people that are diagnosed with breast cancer. It's 80% of women diagnosed and men diagnosed with breast cancer do not have a family history. So you're talking a pretty small percentage, in comparison.
Why do you think there's such little dialogue about MBC? Because right now there's about anywhere between 150 to 250,000 women who are diagnosed with stage 4.
Right.
And why do you think that the narrative around breast cancer is not as inclusive of a stage 4 discussion or narrative?
Well, first of all, the estimate of people that are living with stage 4 disease is probably wildly incorrect, and it's probably way more than that.
Wow.
So what happens is when a woman is diagnosed with an early stage disease, she's tracked as that stage until she dies. Even if she recurs metastatic, she's never tracked as a metastatic patient. So only those who are de novo metastatic, like me, who are diagnosed stage 4 out of the gate, I'm tracked as those stage 4 patients. But the SEER database doesn't track us. They don't track the rate of metastases from early stage diagnosis. So one, that's really wrong. If you think across the country, 3 million people are diagnosed with breast cancer and a third of those metastasize, that means there has to be nearly 1 million people living with metastatic breast cancer in this country. But to your point, we don't have a happy ending. We're not the pink survivors, and we're not rah-rah cheering and applauding because, we beat cancer. Everyone says, you have to have a positive attitude or just be strong, or, they put their pink boxing gloves on and they're like, I can beat this, I'm strong. Well, does that mean that I'm not strong? Does that mean that I'm a weak person because I'm going to die from this disease? But it makes me no less of a woman than an early stage person. But again, I'm not going to have that, happy survivorship story. I know how this ends for me. My cancer will learn to grow around my therapy, and I will eventually exhaust all of my therapy options, and I'll die. And, that's hard for people to hear. And I think that, it's really in your face and it's uncomfortable for people to talk about. But just like you want to talk about what you do for a living, sometimes I want to talk about cancer. And so I think that it's important, for people to just be comfortable talking about this, because if we're not talking about it, right, there's no change that's going to evolve from it.
Now, from when you were diagnosed, you've really propelled yourself as an influencer in this community. Started out doing, I think, a hashtag campaign, Don't Ignore Stage 4,
right.
To now becoming, the president of one of the largest and most active, metastatic breast cancer advocacy organizations out there. One, where did you find the initial passion, energy? Because obviously this can be a psychologically debilitating diagnosis.
Right.
It is, and you can either do one of two things. You can continue to live somewhat in isolation and with your family around you, kind of getting support from an inner circle, or you can be loud and you can kind of go out there, and you've chosen to kind of really be a voice for this community. One, where did you find that energy and the passion to do that in the wake of your diagnosis? And then how did you really kind of shoot up in terms of the recognition and the awareness that you've been able to create in such a short period of time?
So when I was first diagnosed, it was really hard, like you said, mentally, emotionally. Physically, it had, a pretty tremendous surgery. And I was actually in a wheelchair, was emaciated. I really couldn't move around. I had to have, someone help me shower, help me go to the bathroom. So that was really difficult for me because I've always been very independent. And it took a long time to come back from that. And I couldn't see past that wheelchair, and I couldn't see past that handicapped toilet seat. I just thought, this is my life and this is what it's going to be until I die. But every day I got stronger, and I was able, to eventually walk on my own and shower on my own. And I can remember like when I could bend down and put my pants on one leg at a time, without help. That was a big deal. And so I just got stronger and stronger. And the more I thought about it and the more I researched how little was being done in the metastatic arena, the angrier that I got. And so I think really the catalyst is just anger. The energy comes from that. I try to spin it into something positive. And I joined this online support group. It's for women under 40 who have been diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. And there were about 160 of us at the time. And we're in there and we're talking and we're meeting each other and we're sharing stories, and we're like, something has to be done. We can't just die in silence, right? Someone needs to hear that we're out here and we're struggling. And so I started this campaign called Stomp Out BC, and it was a viral or a virtual protest. And I used the hashtag Don't Ignore Stage 4, which is trademarked by Metavivor.
Okay.
So at the time I didn't realize that, but we launched, and
Did they send you a cease and desist?
not exactly, but so it launched, and we trended number 2 on Facebook and Twitter all day, and we had like over 82,000 people retweeting and sharing and posting, and it was huge. Yeah. And so later that night, I was on the road. Later that night, I got a call from CJ at Metavivor who said, "What are you doing? Like, what is going on?" Because their social was blowing up, And so I said, "Look, this is what happened." She was like, "Well, look, we're happy for you to use the hashtag, but you have to use it in conjunction with Metavivor, and we want you to come help us with our social media." I was like, "Okay." So that was my introduction to Metavivor, and here I am.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, we were talking back in the green room about how kind of unapologetically you live. You live out loud. You live your truth. You are who you are. And you had a double mastectomy, and you have a tendency to be online, with your shirt off, and you're like, "This is who I am." What is the motivation behind this statement of being, advert with kind of letting people know? Or one, why did you choose not to get reconstructive surgery? And two, why do you feel compelled to kind of really show the world that this is how we live, this is who we are?
Right. So with reconstruction, there's a pretty high rate of rejection or infection, which means more surgery, more downtime, more medications, more doctor's visits. So I wasn't into any of that. Yeah. And, because I had 2 areolas on breast cancer patients, I've seen a lot of reconstruction, and none of them looked like natural breasts.
Got it.
I mean, it's not the same as having an augmentation. They take everything off and then they reconstruct, and if you've had radiation or anything like that, I mean, it's just not a pretty breast. It might look great in clothes. But I didn't want that, so I didn't want that look. I didn't want fake. I'm just not fake. I'm not fake. It's just not for me. And I didn't want surgeries. I didn't want extra surgeries if things didn't go right. Yeah. So I'd never had a lump in my breast. I had a very unusual presentation, and so I opted for a mastectomy because I was fearful that the primary tumor was still there, feeding distant metastases, or maybe there was a secondary tumor that they weren't seeing. So I wanted to just have my breast removed to eliminate that. And also, to not have that constant reminder, my breasts were no longer sexualized to me in any way, and I just didn't want to look at them anymore. I didn't want anyone to look at them. So I wanted them off. And it was hard. It was a hard decision. It was hard to get a doctor to do it, to be honest.
So they were trying to talk you out of it.
Yeah, they told me that my quality of life would be diminished. I mean, if I wanted to have double Ds out in here, no one would bat an eye. But if you go into a doctor's office and say, "I want to have my breasts removed," then everyone freaks out. And they wanted me to see a psychiatrist. It was the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And so obviously that hasn't been the case, right?
No. It's my quality of life is way better. I don't have to wear a bra. That's fantastic. My yoga's better. My balance is better. My back doesn't hurt anymore. I mean, I'm a tiny woman, but I had big breasts. I mean, so my back doesn't hurt. And I post my pictures topless online because I want other people, other women specifically, to see me and be like, "Wow, like she could do it. I shouldn't be ashamed of my body," because I hear that all the time. Women will say, "I've been ashamed of my body since my surgery, and I see your pictures and it makes me feel better about myself." And it's like, I feel more beautiful and feminine now than I did when I had breast and curves.
You know, it's interesting you say that because I think it's so true when you see women who are post-chemo, going through chemo, they lose their hair, they cover their head up, you know, or if I've gotten mastectomy, I got to cover myself up, right? It's almost shameful to be going through this process. And you've kind of taken the power back and flipped it on its head and said, no, I'm going to turn it into something that could be liberating. Is that what you find the response is, or do you still get kind of polarizing responses?
Yeah, it's pretty mixed. You know, some people are like, right on, thank you, I appreciate it, and some people are like, I need to put your shirt on, or, you know, especially because I'm tattooed. There's a lot of derogatory remarks about my tattoos, and I'm like, if you're commenting about my tattoos, you missed the point of the whole thing, right? Like, so yeah, it's pretty mixed, but I just, you know, it's just water rolling off my back. I don't even worry about it.
So going back to, not to stay on your breast, on
my not breast.
but you know, there's a lot of women who feel being preemptive in having kind of a mastectomy as a preemptive move. Is that something that can be a preventative measure in terms of you know, stopping metastatic breast cancer or metastatic breast cancer from happening, or can you still be prone to it even if you have had your breast removed?
Yeah, so you're still going to be prone to it even if you had your breast removed. Now, it'll lessen the chance, but when they do a mastectomy, they don't remove all of the breast tissue. It's impossible to do that. And so even if there's, you know, a few breast cells that are still there, then you could certainly get disease. I mean, I'm a good example of I never had a breast tumor, right? I never had a lump. Even after they took them off and sent them to pathology, they never found anything in my breasts. So that's a perfect example of, you know, you don't even have to have a tumor in your breast, and it can happen. You know, as I said, my case was a little unique, but it can definitely happen. So even if they do it preventatively, it may lessen their chance, but it doesn't mean that they're out of the woods.
Got it. Now, I mean, about 30% of women who are diagnosed with an early stage wind up getting metastatic breast cancer.
Exactly.
So a lot of those women have gone through a mastectomy as well, right? So that kind of proves the point that you still are extremely susceptible to being able to get metastatic.
Right. All it takes is that one tiny cancer cell to break off from that original tumor. And if that broke off before you had your surgery, and it's, you know, circulating through your body, that cell can lay dormant for years. I mean, I certainly know women who have been 15, 20, 30 years out of treatment from early stage breast cancer, and then they have a tumor in their liver or their lung. We don't know why that happens. We don't know how that happens. And that's, you know, part of the research that needs to happen is to learn why that happens and hopefully learn how to prevent that from happening, at the same time trying to keep women like me who have already metastasized alive.
Got it. Now, you obviously were extremely healthy pre-diagnosis, gym 5 times a day, eating clean.
5 times a week? I'd be jacked.
Like, wow. 5 times a week, very active life. You know, you obviously have a lot of love around your life with your husband and your children. Post-diagnosis now, did that prepare you for a post-diagnosis kind of lifestyle? And are you seeing a lot of women having to kind of change their behavior on a dime and basically incorporate kind of new principles of living, whether it be diet, whether it be exercise? How much can someone who is post-diagnosis expect to continue to live some level of normalcy there, or is that something that they have to change completely if they want to kind of enhance their probability of elongating their life post-diagnosis?
So really, ultimately, it doesn't matter. I mean, I could eat clean or I could eat McDonald's every day. It's not going to matter. I'm going to die either way. And that's for anybody with metastatic breast cancer. I think sometimes we talk about eating healthy and exercising and the benefits of all that stuff, but really what it does is kind of puts blame on the patient, so that like if another patient who had, say, a very similar diagnosis as I do decline more rapidly than me, we could say, oh, well, she didn't diet or exercise, but the truth is it's just shitty luck. I was always healthy before, and I'm healthy now. You know, I try to fuel my body, I try to take care of my body, but I honored that before my disease, and so I continue to honor it now. And I see most people who live one way, if they're hitting McDonald's drive-through or whatever, they're, not going to the gym, like they are not going to just change. Now, some people do because, they're grasping at straws. Well, I'm going to do this and this and this, and I'm going to be okay. And it may make them feel better because, like, when we exercise and we fuel our body with good food, right, we just feel better. But at the end of the day, it's not going to change.
So I follow you on IG, and you're very transparent on IG when you have good days and bad days. What's a good day for Beth Fairchild, and what's a bad day feel like or look like for you?
A good day is when I get up. I'm always sore in the morning. My joints are stiff. It's just a side effect of my medication. I stretch out a little bit, have some hot tea, start my day, just have a normal day. Go to the beach, do some yoga, teach my little people, like a little Stanley White Rec Center in New Bern. Shout out to my little people.
New Bern in the house.
I get to go and teach yoga to kindergartners. It's pretty cool. A bad day is I just, I don't want to get up. It hurts. I don't want to put my feet on the floor and start the day. I don't want to face it. It's a big deal to get up and even look in the mirror. You're facing your own mortality every single day.
Yeah.
And you just push past it. And some days it's just too hard to push past that.
How does this, you talked a little bit about the fear you have for your daughter. How has your relationship evolved, changed, since your diagnosis?
I'm not sure it has a ton because I've been doing so well. They're like just regular kids, and I think that's cool. I just want them to be regular kids. I don't want to be mom with cancer. I just want to be mom. I think I'm a little less, I don't know, a little more chill with them. I used to be really strict, and they're...
You let them sneak out the house a little bit more now?
I'm just kind of like, whatever. Do you want your boyfriend to come over? It's fine, whatever. I'm just a little more relaxed because I want to see them do all these things, that maybe they wouldn't have done had I not had cancer. Like my daughter went to India for a medical internship, and she saw some graffiti on the wall and took a picture of it. And she was like, Mom, I want this to be my first tattoo, and I want us to get matching tattoos. And I thought about it because I told her she wasn't allowed to get tattooed until she graduated college. But I thought, she's a good kid, she's, good grades, and I thought, well, maybe when she turns 18, I won't be well enough to be tattooed. So we went and got matching tattoos.
Nice.
And so that was kind of cool. That would have definitely never happened if it weren't for cancer.
Yeah.
But, I think we're closer. I think my whole family pretty much realizes the weight of the situation. And so, we don't take for granted just the mundane things and, how big of a deal it is to just cook out together or sit by the pool together. It's a blessing.
Is that the biggest experience or lesson that you've taken away from this experience in terms of, you mentioned, focusing on the little things and those things. Is there another lesson that you've taken from this experience or something that you've learned about yourself that you didn't know to be true?
I just think living for the day, right? Like when you're young, you say, well, I'm going to get a cool car when I get a job, and when you get that job, and you get that car, and then you want a house, and you're like, I got this house, and after I get my master's degree, maybe I'll get married, and then maybe I'll have kids, and then people ended up putting this stuff off, and, you're just living for the next thing. You're living and working for the next thing that you want in your life, and I was doing that, I was doing that. And I should have just been living for me and doing what I want to do. And, as long as my kids are taken care of and I'm a good mom, what difference does it make? So I've learned that. I just live for me. And I really just don't give a shit what other people think. I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to bring harm to anyone. But, if I want to go to Thailand and ride elephants, and I want to hop on a plane and go to Thailand and ride elephants, I don't know. If I want to take my shirt off on the beach, I'm going to take my shirt off on the beach. If I want to tattoo my face, I'm going to tattoo my face.
Yeah, so you speak about Well, I mean, it's evident that you live with a level of freedom. You know, if there was a rock star in NBC, you would be the rock star. You'd be
I don't know about that.
You'd be the headliner of the NBC concert. But you sound and you come across of someone who obviously has reached a level of spiritual enlightenment. Has yoga helped you kind of tap into more of a spiritual center? Or, I mean, you've obviously done yoga even prior to your diagnosis, but do you think having an experience with yoga has helped you kind of tap into a spiritual energy that has powered you through some of those rough moments?
I'm not sure I could attribute that to yoga. I mean, I've pretty much always marched to the beat of my own drum. I've always flown by the seat of my pants and never been on any kind of schedule. And shit just always works out for me. I can't explain it. Yoga is my happy place, you know, where I get to be quiet, my mind gets to be quiet, and I can work on my body. But no, I've always kind of had just, I don't know, an old soul maybe, where I just like, I'm just real and transparent. And I think that's how everybody should be.
So let's segue a little bit to the work you're doing at Metavivor. Can you talk a little bit about kind of your role as president and what, you know, kind of your job description entails on a day-to-day basis?
So really outreach is probably the biggest thing that I do, is just making connections for the organization, introducing people to Metavivor, talking about Metavivor. I'm really proud of the organization, so, you know, I'm always happy to like meet people and explain to them what we do and the research that we fund. But I would say, yeah, outreach is definitely like the biggest hat that I wear there.
And the main goal of the organization is awareness about MBC? Or?
The main mission of Metavivor is to fund research for the metastatic patient, hoping to improve the quality and extend the life of that patient. So the research that we fund specifically is no prevention, no mechanics of, so no prevention of metastasis, no learning how it happens, but just focused on patients who are living with disease and trying to find, you know, research that'll lead to more treatment options.
And do you think that there's a lot of proactive investment right now in the kind of health sciences community in terms of investing in research that could potentially lead to a cure? Where are we as a health industry with respect to MBC and the research that's going into preventative therapies?
Well, we're losing, you know, about 41,000 men and women a year to metastatic breast cancer, and that number is unchanged since they started tracking it in the SEER database. So where are we now? Not much further than we were 30 years ago, which is a shame. There's a lot of money being put into prevention of breast cancer, which is great. It means a lot to my kids, right?
Yeah.
But for me and for those who are living with metastatic breast cancer, or for anyone who has had an early stage diagnosis already, it doesn't do us any good. What we need is top-down research. We need to start at the top. So if they can fix people like me and they can keep me alive for a normal lifespan, then no one will ever have to worry about having an early stage diagnosis, because even if you metastasize, you know that you're not going to die. And I see, you know, the median survival kind of creeping up, right? Like 30 years ago, you were diagnosed, you maybe had a few weeks to 6 months to live. Now you have 18 to 36 months to live. Well, 18 to 36 months isn't the greatest, but it's better than just a few weeks. But if we're able to continue to develop therapies that'll keep these patients going, you know, a bridge to a bridge to a bridge, so to speak, then we could render this a chronic disease instead of one that's terminal, much like we did with HIV in the 80s. And, you know, I don't think there's a cure. There's no magic cure. There's over 18 different kinds of breast cancer. So there's no one cure, right?
Yeah.
But it is certainly feasible that we could develop enough therapies that, you know, once one runs out, you just go on to another one, and have these things that are available for people to stay on long term for many years. You know, happily take my therapy every day for the next 20, 30 years, as long as it's working.
Awesome. Beth, you are a light that shines on all of us, an inspiration, just an amazing person. Your energy is incredible despite what you deal with every day. I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story with us. not only your story, but just incredible factual information that I think is going to help a lot of people. If there was a tidbit of advice that you can give a newly diagnosed woman or man with metastatic breast cancer right now, what would it be?
That they're not alone. There's many people just like them living out their same story. And they can go to metavivor.org and find someone to connect with. You don't have to do it by yourself.
Awesome. I'm Joe Anthony. This is Beth Fairchild. She's definitely a hero. Thank you so much, Beth, for joining us.
Thanks for having me,
Give me a
Jack.
hug.